So welcome to season 2, episode 14 of the Me and ADHD podcast. For this episode, we're going to be having a conversation about psychotherapy and counselling and the roles it plays in supporting someone with ADHD. The reason for this basically is to keep everyone's eyes and minds open to putting therapy in their bag of supportive strategies. Because it can help. It's helped me and it will continue to help me. So with this in mind, joining me today is Counsellor and Psychotherapist Kate Hough from Dot Wellbeing. Welcome to my little podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you. Good to see you. I did say your surname correctly, didn't I?
No.
No.
I was gonna say, do I correct him? Yeah, it's Kate Hough, like Huff. Everyone gets it wrong though. It's not the worst mispronunciation that I've ever had, trust me.
I was thinking, I thought, I looked at it and I'm like, well, I know there's going to be a couple of ways you can pronounce this, but I'll ask her. But I wasn't organised enough to ask you beforehand.
So okay, yeah, Kate Hough.
Kate Hough. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
How you doing? You all right?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. A little bit all over the place today, to be honest with you, but I'm feeling okay.
Well, hopefully when we get into things, say, we'll ground, we'll settle.
You're going to charge me for it as well afterwards?
No, it's all right. The first initial consultation's free.
No, okay, thank you. Right. Well, again, welcome to the show, and it's one of those things that I've used before, not psychotherapy as such, but I've used therapy before my diagnosis, because at a point where I had to talk because things were getting a bit too much. I didn't know why. It just wasn't me, and although the therapist wasn't sort of specialized in ADHD or anything like that, but that wasn't on the radar. It was just good to talk. It really was just good to talk and let it out, and have someone who's not judgmental, and who's able to give some sort of advice and to make me look at things in certain ways. And yeah, that helped a lot.
Yeah, you know, it's like when you know when you're sort of like, I need to talk to somebody now.
Yeah.
I always describe it as you should never get to the point, and unfortunately this is the point where a lot of people reach out for help, is when you're like a bottle of pop and you've been shaken, and eventually the cap is just gonna fly off. Like there's only so much pressure in that like container that you can take. A human being, there is only so much one person can take before you're either going to explode. And unfortunately, that's often the point people look at the mess and go, now I need to go to therapy. Whereas if we can get you there when you're noticing it's starting to bubble, then you're at a much better, you're going to prevent that outburst actually happening.
Yeah.
And but I understand what you mean when you need to go and talk to somebody.
Yeah. It was just things that I've always internalized everything. Always. Not like I keep my emotions to myself or anything, but when I'm stressed and when I'm having a hard time, even when I'm angry a lot of the time, it's all internal, all internal. And I've always been able to do that. So I don't have these big ADHD outbursts, they're inbursts, if anything, you know what I mean? It's, but it was becoming external, and this is not, I don't like this. This is not who I am. This is not how I've acted. This is not, why am I feeling and acting this way over these seemingly quite trivial things that really I feel that I should be able to deal with. But it helped me, and it helped me on the line, to get my diagnosis. So, but no, it was good. But you do your thing as well, which is that the psychotherapy and counselling. Now you're ADHD as well, aren't you? You've been diagnosed.
I am, yes. So I've been only recently, I've known, I'm sure you've probably experienced the same, for a while before you actually get your diagnosis. But I was actually only officially diagnosed in 2024, so only last year, with combined ADHD, so both inattentive and hyperactive ADHD.
Okay. Okay. That's another podcast I was going to mention. But it's this like, you've got the male's ADHD, and I've got the female's ADHD. Just for anyone who's listening, I hate that terminology. So I was just having a bit of a laugh there. But yeah, no, that's. Do you know what? It's strange. I know, side topic a little bit. That I hear so much about the whole female ADHD presentation
Mm.
being inattentive. I'm like, well, that's me. Um, but I actually don't know of any other female ADHD who's inattentive. They've all been
Right,
combined.
right,
So it's
wow.
it's
Interesting.
strange.
That is
So
really interesting. Because I mean, yes, there's definitely, obviously the male and female bodies are chemically, we are made up slightly differently. So yes, you would expect, obviously ADHD is about the chemical makeup of your brain. You would expect maybe slightly different presentations, but not to the point where you would go, you can only have that one and you can only have that one. But it is
yeah,
interesting that all the females that you've spoken to seem to have both.
yeah,
And it's, I think I'm trying to think back, because I work with a lot of clients with ADHD. I would say probably at this point, if I was to try and put a statistic on it, maybe 65% of my clients are definitely neurodiverse, more leaning towards ADHD, whether that is diagnosed or not. And I'm trying to think, do I have any females that are not combined, or that are just inattentive? And actually, yeah, no, I don't think I do.
so it's weird how they come up with that. But I think it needs to stop anyway, because otherwise
Yes,
it's
I
going to
agree.
go. I mean, we're in this mess. I think partly because it's only young boys who got ADHD, so we
Yeah.
don't need to give only women get this. No, we don't need to go
Yeah,
there again.
it's a pet peeve of mine that if if I hear one more time somebody say to me like, "Oh, are you sure you've got ADHD? Because like you're a female." And I'm like, "Pretty sure, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've got ADHD." Or well, I suppose it was only until a couple of years ago that men could be even like autistic geniuses. And obviously, it's just completely misguiding and inaccurate information that I'm surprised some people still hold on to. But it's hopeful that, say, things like this and conversations like this can help educate people into the fact that that is outdated, like that isn't actually the case anymore. And
Yeah,
that's why there is such an influx of women and girls with neurodiversity, particularly ADHD, coming forward now. It isn't that suddenly everybody has ADHD. Another pet peeve quote. It isn't that everybody has ADHD nowadays. That's not true. It's just that there are generations and generations, particularly of women and young girls, who have been missed because it does present differently, and in children more particularly, and it's been missed because we didn't think that women could have it. But here we are.
you are with us.
Surprise!
Who says you can join our club?
I know. Didn't realise it was exclusive.
Oh dear, yeah. It's strange being one of the most. I keep on reading one of the most. I keep on forgetting the words with this. One of those deeply researched mental conditions, um, and it's been in the medical text since the 1700s.
Mm,
So this is well-known information that hasn't been passed around.
yes.
So
Yes.
it's crazy how that
And
is. And in the DSM, I think it's 4. It it's changed its name quite a few times, but before it went to ADHD, it was ADD, which is attention deficit disorder, sorry, I wasn't telling you, I was just telling everyone else. Sorry, telling the psychotherapist what it is. So with or without hyperactivity and impulsivity. So
Yes.
with that in mind, kind of like the inattentive part is key. Sounds like that's the
Yeah.
key part, and then with or without the rest of it. So why have they spent so long forgetting about the inattentive part and just
I know. It's crazy. They've so more recently they've flipped that around from my understanding. So obviously now you're probably not going to be diagnosed with ADD. Like nowadays, it's ADHD. ADD now falls under the bracket of ADHD,
yeah,
but is now characterized as inattentive ADHD. So I've got some clients that come to me and say, but I'm inattentive. So where's the H coming from? Why am I still being diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm inattentive ADHD? And it's so that's another conversation, a whole other conversation in itself. But yeah, ADD is now more characterized in inattentive ADHD. So it's interesting that it's good that it's getting its own sort of stamp. It's like, this is, you can have ADHD, but not be running around like a headless chicken, like really chaotic all the time. That is not the poster child for ADHD is not how a lot of people actually experience it. It's how some
yeah,
people experience it, and that's still valid. But there's a whole other world of ADHD that we've been missing. That again, I'm really pleased now there's a term for it, and people who get that diagnosis can feel really validated in the fact of, oh, I'm not making this up. Like, there is still something that I feel makes me a bit different and makes me struggle in the neurotypical world. And now I know what I can sort of call that. And that can be really powerful for so many people.
yeah. It helped me. And a lot of people, when they get
Yeah.
diagnosed, they go through the whole thinking about, oh, what could have been and things like that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I wasn't one of them. I was, and I'm still am. And I've said it so many times. I'm in this euphoric bubble of now I
Yeah.
have answers. I am
Yes.
not what people tell me I was. There's
Yeah.
answers to everything. Um, that my education. I didn't have an education. I went to school. I was never in trouble. I was the good lad sitting in the back of the
Yeah.
class, not doing any work whatsoever. So
Yeah.
I never got in trouble for being naughty. I got in trouble because I did the wrong homework.
Mm.
So um, so yeah, so all that kind of I can cut myself so much slack now
Yes,
from the
absolutely.
past because that's I had this developmental condition that
Yeah.
made things so much harder for me, and there was no support. Um,
100%.
so that was great. I was really happy to have the answers. It wasn't the diagnosis, it's
Yeah.
the correct answers that made everything make sense.
Yes. Yes.
So
I noticed when I'd started over the years validating, as I was on the waiting list for a diagnosis, sort of validating more and more. Yeah, like, surely, like, at this point, I'd be hard pushed if they turn around and said, you don't have ADHD. I think I'd be heartbroken because all of a sudden I'd have so many more questions. Whereas
yeah,
that felt like a really, let's say for me, obviously knowing more about ADHD anyway because of my work, sort of, I was like, yeah, okay, this fits, this makes sense. I can hold on to that, but I didn't anticipate the difference physically getting the diagnosis would make for me. So for me, it was, oh wow, like, I can now all masks just went for me. So I didn't realize how much I was still masking to try and be like, "Oh, but what if I don't? Like, I still need to maybe try and like rein this in a bit because if I don't have ADHD, then what am I going to do?" Whereas the moment somebody said, I'm comfortable to give you a diagnosis of combined ADHD, it's like I went, oh God, thank God for that.
yeah,
Like, it was, I just all of a sudden have never felt more like myself and more able to completely unapologetically be myself and not say sorry for it. Like, I don't need to
yeah,
say sorry for who I am because I was born this way. And I quite like having ADHD. Don't get me wrong. Drives me around on a bad day, drives me around the bend. And if you ask me on a bad day, would you, if you could take this pill right now and I could tell you're not going to have ADHD anymore, I'd consider it. But 90% of the time, I love having ADHD. I think because it makes me, it's my personality, it's who I am, and I don't want to change that.
No, it's fair enough. That is fair enough. I mean, I say everyone's got their own sort of story and the reasons they have their story and how they look at things and the things like that. And I think you've got to try and be as positive as much as possible, with what you got, and because hopefully you're gonna have a lot of years in front of you, so it's you want to try and be as positive as possible, don't you?
100%. Life's a long time to not like who you are and not embrace who you are.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I know that
Mm.
very well.
It's a really, I think, a really powerful thing. And again, this is where therapy comes in. Being able to have a space where you can unapologetically be yourself and you are accepted. A lot of my clients coming to therapy is the first time in their life they truly feel seen, heard, valued, and they don't have to mask. It's like you can walk out that door or end that call with myself or any other therapist, and you might have to go back to masking immediately, but for that hour you can take it off. So it can be such a powerful tool in just helping somebody get a taste of what life will be like eventually, more towards the end of that therapy journey, when you can be like that all the time. And I think that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. And yeah, speaking of therapy,
Yes.
should we get on with the podcast? It's
Yeah,
unlike
back to that.
it's unlike two
Sorry, here again.
ADHDs, but they digress. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, uh, so how does psychotherapy then and counselling help with ADHD?
So I would say that the primary thing for me, the same as you said, your therapist actually helped you figure out you had ADHD. I was the same. So I went to therapy. I think a lot of people with ADHD will go to therapy thinking, why do I do this? Like, why am I constantly, why can I not listen to my partner talk? Is there a relationship in is our relationship the problem? Is it that I don't love them anymore because I don't find them interesting because I just can't remember what they're saying to me? So they'll start to notice traits in themselves that they don't maybe attribute to ADHD. A lot of people will walk through the door, come to therapy and say, yeah, this is how I'm presenting. And a therapist, I'm not saying this is a therapist's role, but often what therapy can be amazing for is for, like you and I, a therapist just go, I'm going to gently, I was so gentle about this when I do it myself, like drop in. Have you ever explored the fact that, I'm noticing you do this and I'm noticing you do this, and you sort of create a bit of a picture for somebody and go, these are all characteristics of ADHD. Now, I'm not saying I'm not diagnosing you, I'm not pushing this on you. It's just offering it as a suggestion of, could it be ADHD? Could this be an answer to a lot of the difficulties you're having? That doesn't mean it takes away from personal responsibility and accountability for how you're behaving or validating your feelings in how you're responding to something, let's say RSD, but it can offer therapy can help shine a light on ADHD in the first place to help somebody to get answers to those questions. So I would say that's at the very beginning of somebody's therapy journey.
Yeah.
Can be a way that therapy can help with potential ADHD. Further to that, I would say if somebody's walking in with a diagnosis already, let's say of ADHD, or we're a couple of months down the line and a lot of my clients, I've suggested it, it's landed quite well. They've gone to the doctors, they've got their diagnosis, or they've gone privately, whichever route they choose to take, and we're then like, okay, now what do we do about this? And with that, I would say therapy can be amazing for as I said to you earlier, being a space where they can unmask and they can unapologetically be themselves, I think we can't take away from the value that has
Yeah.
in and of
Yes.
itself.
Yeah.
You therapists can then also validate your experiences. I love working with individuals with ADHD because I get it. And I get it on a level that obviously I have empathy for all of my clients, but I know how it feels to live with ADHD. So I can really have empathy and validate all of those thoughts and feelings that are going through their mind because I've probably felt them myself. So there's the diagnosing in the first place can help with. There's obviously the safe space, validation, exploring life with ADHD together so they feel less alone. But then you can also be, for myself, every therapist modality is different, but the way I work is I will try and help people a bit more practically as well. So, yes,
Okay.
I will help you get out what you need to get out, and I will understand you, validate you, reflect that back. But I will also, I'm not afraid to challenge people who I've built up that relationship with in terms of, okay, so when your mother in law said, oh, I don't know, these biscuits could do with a bit more nutmeg in them, and you had an absolute meltdown because RSD just went wild, being like, okay, how can we look at this differently? So it's so valid because you have ADHD and rejection sensitivity is a thing. We've already discussed, this through and I've, psychoeducated as to why they're getting that response. But a lot of people then be like, okay, I don't want to feel like this though. So psychotherapy cannot change the fact you have ADHD. I can't sit here and wave a magic wand and go, I'm going to fix your ADHD. I'm going to make you not have it anymore. I'm going to make you not want to die inside when your mother-in-law says that. What I can help with is, okay, you can't control the fact you've got ADHD. You can control how you respond to that comment. So you can control leaving the room or politely, saying, I just need 5 minutes to self-soothe, have a check-in, really try and sort of regulate your emotions. And I will give people tips on how to regulate their emotions in that way with the lens of ADHD on and factoring that in. Or it might be that somebody really wants that promotion and they're talking to me about I really want this promotion, but I don't have, I'm a people pleaser, and like I also I don't want to say this to my boss, I don't want the confrontation, and and it might, so then we might work on, okay, we might sit together in a session and write the email. Like, a therapy is whatever you need it to be. So it's not prescriptive. If that's what that person needs to use that time for, somebody who can essentially body double, who can be
Yeah.
like, okay, if you're procrastinating writing this email, if you're procrastinating setting that boundary, if you're procrastinating or you feel uncomfortable to do these things, let's do it together. So can help hold you accountable in that way. So with ADHD, you might take a different approach to therapy. You come at it with the lens of this is an individual with ADHD. How do I work with this individual? So yeah, therapy being used in lots of different ways, not just the let's sit and talk about how you feel.
Cool. No, that's interesting. And I think it's interesting for people to hear that as well. Um, I find doing the podcast therapy for me. This is my
Mm,
therapy. I am not a natural talker. I am not a natural presenter. I'm probably one of the worst podcast hosts there is out there, but I get a lot out of this.
yeah.
I've never been someone to be in the limelight. This is not me. This is medication talking here,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be doing this at all beforehand. But it helps me to talk to other ADHDers about their experiences, what they're going through, and talk about mine, because it's me talking about mine as well. And it's
Yeah.
relating to other people who get it,
Yeah.
talking to people who get it, and you can be yourself. And I need that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, Other therapies, well, talking therapies, I need as
Hmm.
well. But this is, it doesn't have to be, like you said, your book standard, stereotypical, sit or lying on a couch,
Yeah.
kind of, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah. It's, I think I say every therapist is different, but that's just my approach. I think people don't go to therapy because they want somebody to just sit there and go, uh huh. Yeah. So that's not helpful.
Mm.
Yes, it might be nice for somebody with ADHD to just be able to word vomit, but it needs to be productive in a way. It's probably not
Yeah.
the right word, but needs to be worth their time, worth of value to them. And me sitting there not one either bringing up the fact I think they have ADHD, or to take a back seat and not actually go, okay, I'm noticing that you're doing this and I'm curious about it. Like, could you tell me more about that? Actually asking a couple of questions, being a little bit more, I'm noticing you're not talking about this. Is there a reason? I'm not pressuring you, but is there a reason that you're not talking about this? I think I've seen the difference in people very quickly because they know that, okay, this person's on my side. This person's not out to get me. This person genuinely wants to help me. And okay, so yeah, I think that is really valuable. And obviously, yes, I'm biased, but everybody should be in therapy because yeah, the common misconception I find is people think they have to have a problem to go to therapy. And as I said to you at the beginning, it gets so wound up that actually they should have been in therapy 6 months before that,
Yeah.
because therapy can just help you. Like, anybody can benefit from learning more about themselves, learning why they interact in that way with the world, and how they could maybe do that differently, and how they could be a healthy, happier version of themselves by making small changes. It might be setting that boundary, send that email, take that risk, whatever it may be. And therapy can just give you that little bit of a nudge and that companionship in being able to do that.
It's like servicing your car,
Yeah,
so to speak. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's going over things to make sure that things are running smoothly all the time. You
Yes,
know,
absolutely.
when you
You go
have
to
these
the
things in
gym.
place. Say again.
So you go to the gym for your physical health. Go to therapy for your mental health.
Yeah. So when you know the strategies, it helps life. I mean, I now know I get overstimulated. A lot of certain sounds that I hear a lot, but now I put my headphones on. I don't wait until that moment that I can't stand it anymore.
Yes.
That's silly. I know it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I put the headphones on, listen to
Yeah.
some music. To be fair, music is usually rain in the forest rain sounds.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't,
Yeah.
spike into this, overstimulated state. So
Yes.
then
And
when I know that time is over, I take the back off again. There you go.
yeah. And
Problem avoided.
that I say that's so important because that shows that you understand your sensory profile. So you understand and have that knowledge that I know when I go into this busy shopping centre, it's going to overstimulate me. That I know that I am hypersensitive to noise. So I'm going to pre-plan for that so that I don't feel that level of overwhelm. And again, back to your question previously, another way therapy can help you if you have ADHD, bringing to your awareness, okay, I'm noticing that when you are saying to me, I'm feeling really anxious, don't know why, let's look at what situation you're in when you're feeling really anxious. Interesting. You're in a really busy crowd. Okay, what could we change here? What can we do about that? So we can't control the fact that, yes, if you go to a shopping centre on a Saturday, it's going to be busy. What can we control? We can control taking your headphones, or we can control factoring in pre-planning your route. Let's manage the anxiety in whatever way we can. Let's factor in the time that you're going. Do you need to take somebody with you? How can we make this situation 10% more manageable? Because it's better than where you're at now.
Yeah.
So you understand, like, understanding that sensory profile is something that I will always work on with somebody, regardless of inattentive or hyperactive ADHD, because it is the toolkit to being able to help regulate your emotions.
No, no, it is. It is. It's it's taken me. To be fair, it's taken me. I got diagnosed a year and a half ago. Um, I was researching before that. I've been researching, since then. But it's kind of taken me in the last 6 months or so to figure
Mm,
out that I was getting overstimulated.
yeah.
and you know, and then I've worked out. Then I hear about the oh god, what's it called now? So there's the sounds. I
Yeah.
struggle with words.
Okay.
Take so yeah, so I get that, and then I get
Yeah.
cognitive overload as well.
Right. Okay.
I never heard of that, and I was trying to work out why I was getting overloaded at work and things like that. Where was that coming from? Because it's not sensory. It's not, you know, sort of
Mm,
sounds or things like that. So why? But then I started reading more about that, and uh, okay, yeah,
yeah.
now this is making a lot
Yeah.
of sense
Knowledge is
now.
power.
Yeah,
Knowledge is power. With when you're diagnosed with it with something like ADHD, being able to speak to somebody who gets it and can help you to learn about it, whether it's doing your own research, say, or therapy, to help you to navigate this diagnosis that you might not have any idea what it means. You might think, I know I'm struggling, hence why I went for the diagnosis, but I don't actually know what this means for me now. Like, what next? And that can be really daunting. And as well, you mentioned this at the beginning, grieving. Well, okay, I've, working through those emotions in therapy of grieving, I've lived this way for this long and didn't know this about myself. And think of how different life would have been is often what conversations I will have with people. God, life would have been so much easier if I'd have just known this when I was at school, or when I was a teenager, or in my early 20s, when, life can feel, or when I had kids, when there was those periods of time in life where it feels particularly intense. If I'd have known I had ADHD, if I'd have, like you just said, if I had this knowledge that this is why I'm struggling with this is how my brain works, wouldn't I have navigated that so much better? And it can be, yeah, a grieving process of the life I could have had, but whilst also helping somebody to, like, that's valid. We can validate and work through and grieve those feelings. However, how are we also going to help you move forward? How are we also going to make sure that the rest of your life is spent using this information to your advantage and making ADHD work for you as opposed to work against you?
yeah, and it can it kind of I think as a well for me um, as a kind of default state, it tries to work against me all the time as a default level, and it's you're constantly
Yeah.
trying to do things to turn it around. But
Yeah.
when you have those things in place, like we said, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah,
You know,
it's crazy that, like, a small difference, it could be tiny. It could just be cutting the labels out of your clothes. Like, it's a tiny thing, but to not have to sit at the office all day wanting to strip because that label is irritating you so much, and actually then you're snapping at your colleagues and you're, in your own head and you're not concentrating and you don't want to be there, and actually you end up quitting your job, and then you shout at your kids when you get home, all because you just cut the label out. Just know that label's going to irritate you and cut it out, and this snowball might be avoided. But it's just so important being able to recognize that just these tiny, tiny differences can make a huge benefit.
yeah, yeah. The label thing, it's such a classic thing, a classic sensory issue for especially like with kids. You know, and
Mm.
parents going, why is there a problem? Just pull them up. They were fine yesterday.
I need
Like
to put
you
your
know,
name in that so your
this
PE
is
doesn't get lost.
it. And it's like, and that's been one of those things for such a long time. You would think companies who make underwear would have sorted that shit out by now, you
You'd
know.
think so, but again, that's where we open another kettle of fish off. We live in a neurotypical world, so clothing manufacturers are not, unfortunately, I wish they were, but are not sat there thinking, how can we cater to this group of people who is a big group of people with ADHD when we could ship thousands and thousands and millions of these out and not factor in that sensory profile, that sensory need. Maybe
Yeah,
hopefully they'll see this podcast and somebody will go, yeah, maybe we should do that. But we can live in hope. I hope one day that I think we're getting there, but we're getting closer to the point where we're talking about it a lot more. And
yeah,
the conversation seems to be moving in the right direction. yes, there are still those comments of everybody's got ADHD and only but men can have it and things like that. But I feel we are moving more and more away from that narrative. So I hope
Yeah,
one day the world will be a little bit more inclusive for people who are, who mentally have to navigate the world rather than just be present and just go through life, in the world and interact quite seamlessly. We have to think about it. And I think that effort that it takes every single day to take that extra step of I've got to think about what I do and how I've got to think about what texture my clothing is, or what I've got on that day as to what time I should plan to do things around my energy levels and when I know I'm going to crash, or planning, okay, well, I can't go to the supermarket because it's 5 o'clock and it's going to be busy and that's going to overstimulate me. We have to navigate the world, not just go through it.
and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Absolutely exhausting having to do that, not
Yeah.
being able to just do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of thought goes on behind it, and there's a lot of, I guess, recuperating afterwards as well. You know,
Yeah.
I
Get
can
back to me
go,
instead of days after a social event.
yeah. And this is it. Yeah, you can go to a social event. You can do there's certain things I can't do essentially, but even with family, if there's lots of family in the same house and there's lots of noise,
Mm.
I can do that. I know now why I keep on going to the bedroom, lying down.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
because my head is always crying out for silence. Always,
Yeah.
it's too much going on in here. Anything else on top of that, it just wants everything to go away all the
Yeah.
time. Um, yeah, it's hard to deal with, and yeah. Anyway, um, psychotherapy.
Yes.
How is that different to? How is a psychotherapist different to a psychologist in regards to when you go to see them? What is a different approach? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah,
So psychotherapy refers more to helping you to understand how your thoughts, feelings, and emotions affect you,
yeah,
and helping you to really gain sort of self awareness. And as I said to you before, sort of how you interact in the world, how you feel about the world and relationships, understanding yourself more, understanding how you interact in the world more, and then thinking, okay, so what can we do about that? And that's usually, obviously, there's lots of different modalities of it, but primarily client led. Psychology is more, it's more of a broader approach, so it encompasses a broader range of things. So psychology refers more to research, and understanding of like the underlying mechanisms as to why you behave like that. So psychotherapy, we will talk, in a one-to-one therapy session, I would be talking to you about how do you feel about that, what do you think about that, how can we understand you more from that. Psychology would be more, this is based on it's less one-to-one work and would be more research behind why that individual is feeling that way.
right,
So it would be that's why a psychotherapist won't diagnose you with ADHD, but a psychiatrist will, because a psychiatrist is more the diagnostic process, the research process of why do humans behave this way? Not you as an individual, but why do humans behave this way?
right.
And that is more what psychotherapy learns from psychiatry or psychology to inform our practice with the individual there in the moment. But psychiatry and psychology are more the background work that goes on behind the scenes of that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
Informs
so
our research.
which is a good thing.
Yeah,
Let
really
them
good.
let them do the legwork, and then
I'll read your articles and I'll read your research papers and I will learn from that and use it in my practice.
I'm not I'm not saying you are. Anyway, um, ooh, um, so how does psychotherapy help with what areas, I should say, what areas of ADHD does psychotherapy help with? Are there specific areas, and there's areas that it can't help with?
I think similarly to what we said before, of it can help you with one, figuring out you've got ADHD in the first place. Then it can help you with validating your ADHD traits and what that means for you. It can help you with the grieving process of, you know, what life could have been like if you didn't have ADHD, or if you'd have known you had ADHD sooner. It can really help with interpersonal relationships in ADHD. So it
Okay.
can help you tell people you have ADHD. So if you can learn more about your ADHD in a safe, controlled, secure place with a therapist, you might then be able to talk to your therapist about setting boundaries with that mother-in-law that criticized your baking, you know, and being like, okay, you can articulate it. So I have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and I find it difficult when you give me this feedback. In the future, could you try giving me feedback in this way so that, you know, that doesn't trigger me as much? And therapy can help you articulate your needs to family and friends, workplaces, much better. So I would say therapy also has a good place there. I'd say therapy will also help you with ADHD. Obviously, you can be very self-critical. And I would suggest that somebody with ADHD engages in therapy if they are noticing that inner critic is getting a bit too loud. So when they are, or let's say they are feeling rejected a lot of the time and they need to work on RSD, whatever it may be, executive function issues, ADHD can be not ADHD, therapy can be helpful for with ADHD. So that's when I would suggest to somebody, you should probably look at engaging in some counselling sessions, because that inner critic is actually limiting you. That inner critic is getting in your way of being the person you want to be, of getting the opportunities that you want to get, because you are putting yourself down before you've even asked the question, or put yourself in a position you are pre-rejecting yourself, anticipating that rejection before you're putting yourself in a position where anyone else can reject you. So therapy can really help with ADHD traits like that. And as I just mentioned, executive function issues. So if you are finding that you've got that doom pile of washing that you just can't get done.
Yeah.
And actually that's now affecting your relationships. You know, your partner is, you're now rowing with your partner about it. And therapy can be helpful in things like that. One, on the relationship side, helping you to navigate the relationship in general, ADHD or no ADHD, can really help with your interpersonal relationships. But with that ADHD lens, it can look at, so with this executive, let's address the emotional side of it with your partner, but also let's address the executive dysfunction and how we can help with that. So there are things that you can do to try and overcome that gap of between I'm here and the other side of the bridge is, I always describe it as to people as a rickety bridge. You're here. What you want to achieve is over here. But somebody who's neurotypical, this wooden bridge has all the planks in it, and they just walk from A to B. It's like, I want that, and I'm just going to walk across this bridge and I'm going to get it. That might be sending an email. So I want to send this email, I'm going to type out the words, and I'm going to get to the end destination. Somebody with ADHD who's struggling with executive function, some of these slats are missing. So it would be a really big jump to get from A to B. So that's where the decision paralysis can come in, procrastination can come in. That's where you get all of those side tasks done, but not the actual task that you want to do, because it's like you physically can't do it. You physically cannot jump over that gap. It's too big. So you need to, what I will work with people is, and this is more tailored to the individual. So I can't give us more general advice, but I will look to people and go, okay, in your life, where can we slot these in? So what tips and tricks do we need to essentially trick your brain into doing to help make the important thing, sending the email, interesting, putting the washing away? It's important, but it isn't interesting. And somebody with ADHD has an interest-based brain, not an importance-based brain. So I will work with a lot of my clients with ADHD on, okay, let's be realistic about what you don't think is important. But you do need to do to function in daily life, and how for you can we make that interesting. So again,
Yeah.
another way that therapy can be helpful, to answer the other half of your question of how therapy can sometimes not be helpful for ADHD, because that's also, a valid question. Therapy cannot cure ADHD. There isn't a cure. So what I do, some of the more difficult conversations I have with people are that I've felt it myself. You're desperate to feel better. You are desperate to not do some of these things that drive you around the bend. And they will come to therapy and look at me and go, fix me, like make it better. And I sort of having to have that difficult conversation with people and going, I cannot eradicate ADHD from your life, but I can help you to navigate the ADHD so that you can get the most out of life. So the ADHD
Yeah.
no longer needs to be a barrier to anything, but more so I'm going to know I have ADHD and remove said other barriers, or I'm going to look at things differently, try different techniques in order to get me to where I want to be, utilizing my ADHD brain. So what therapy doesn't help for is, people who want it to get rid of or cure ADHD. And some people can find that frustrating, especially if you've got a presentation of ADHD. So you've got some autism in there as well.
Yeah.
People can find that particularly frustrating when they're like, I'm looking to you to make me not do this anymore, and I'm still doing it. And I'm like, okay. And at that point we go back to more of the other side of therapy of, let's talk about that feeling. So that feeling of frustration, let's unpack that. Because like we need to unpack that frustration and work through that and get angry about it and grieve if we need to grieve. And then we can look at what we can do. Because somebody who's coming with that kind of attitude is coming with I can't do it. And it's like, okay, you can't do it that way that you want to do it. You can't do it the way that you want to do it. And I understand that that's hard. But so let's validate that. But then let's look at how you can do it. And we can then flip that mentality. Obviously it takes time, but we can then work at flipping that mentality so that they're interacting with the world in a can-do way rather than a the world's against me way, which is understandable if you do live in a neurotypical world and you're neurodiverse.
That's yeah. What you did, how you just explained it, it strikes. It doesn't make sense, I guess, in a way that there isn't more people taking up the therapy.
Yeah.
It makes sense to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We're here as late diagnosed ADHDers,
Yeah.
and we've struggled, for decades.
Yeah.
So to you're not going to say to yourself, "Yeah, I've got this now. I can do it all now. I've
Yeah.
got all the answers now, so therefore I
Yeah.
can put everything in place, and I'm going to be absolutely fine." We know that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's part of it. We can make things a lot better now. We've got answers and things like that. However, that'll take you to a certain stage. Medication will take you to a certain stage if you're,
Yeah. Yeah.
can
Yeah.
tolerate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But that on its own is not going to get you all the way. You need to use as many things as possible. And
Yeah.
therapy is one of those many things, and it's a big thing as well, you know, understanding what's going on and putting
Yes.
these strategies in place and, how it will work for you personally rather than generally, so
Yes. I think that's a lot of people's. I would say this is going to depend on the therapy. This is how I do therapy with my clients. I'm probably not your average Joe therapist in that sense of I am more interactive. It's because I have ADHD. So I know what I would need from therapy. So I can put that more into my practice. Whereas, yes, if you are going to somebody who is a little bit more backseat, that might be more frustrating and not be as effective as for somebody who has ADHD. And I think that's where talking therapies get a bad rep, because they are seen as more passive. And somebody with ADHD doesn't need passive. They need interaction. They need to have a conversation with their therapist
Yeah.
rather than it being a lot more one-sided. And I've learned that from doing it for years. Like, so yeah, I was trained to be that little bit more backseat, to, not in a bad way, because it has a place for people, but the more I started working with individuals with ADHD, I started to learn when I was hitting a wall, and I'd sit there in my own supervision and be like, why am I hitting a wall with this client? Why can't, why is this not working like it does with maybe my neurotypical clients? And actually it's like, because they're different people, so I need to take a different approach. So that's how my practice has developed. And then obviously with the personal experience as well, it's sort of evolved from there. So I do think that people with ADHD will benefit from therapy. I will say that as a factual statement, will benefit from therapy if you get the right therapist for you and it's a good fit and it's the right modality. So it is something, you have got a therapist who is willing to and able to work with you and your ADHD. One understands it and can challenge you, can validate you, and can help nudge you in directions that potentially you aren't seeing and that you need to go down, as opposed to blindly following the client, sort of where you feel you need to go. Because at the end of the day, you're in therapy because you might feel a bit lost and a bit directionless and frightened and vulnerable. And the last thing that somebody with ADHD who's experiencing all these things, who's got raging, sensitive, like being sensitive to rejection, to then be like, and so what do you think? And it just constantly be like all the questions just being at you, and it just be too overwhelming. So ADHD absolutely can be helped with therapy if you just pick your therapist wisely. Don't get put off by if you pick one and it doesn't work out, I beg people, don't give up. Like, I beg of you to just try again. Try a different therapist, try a different modality. Just keep trying, because you will find somebody that will help you. You will be able to get better. It's just finding the person that works for you.
Do you think it's a bonus, I guess, or it's helpful that for an ADHD to go to a psychotherapist like yourself, who is also ADHD?
I mean, I'm
Not,
biased on
not,
the
yeah.
question, but
Not knocking, anyone who isn't
yeah,
ADHD. However, do you think it helps?
I do. My therapist had ADHD, and I still stand by. I think that's the reason I put, not like she is responsible for the person that I am now. Bless her, I hope she sees this. I've not spoken to her for a while now. But when I was in therapy a few years ago, I was just so lost, and I was like, why am I doing this? And she herself with ADHD was able to just really gently go, you, like, I understand how you feel, but like on a different level. And have you ever explored the possibility that this could be what you're experiencing? And my world I sobbed, because I was like, somebody sees me, somebody gets me. And I think if you can go to a therapist with personal experience in ADHD, if you're questioning whether you have ADHD or you're diagnosed with ADHD, I personally, as an individual with ADHD, I'm a human being as well as a therapist. The human being part of me, who is, a woman who has ADHD, if I was going through difficult times, ADHD related or not, I think having a therapist there that I knew I could stand up in the middle of a session and walk around and fidget, and they wouldn't bat an eyelid. They just get me. I could do what I needed to do in that space. Somebody who I say could be adaptable around me in that sense is so like validating and so valuable. So personally, yes, I think that you will probably connect with your therapist faster and on a different level if you know They know how you feel. I used to be really scared of saying that because I think, RSD, imposter syndrome of, how can I help people with their mental health when I have ADHD myself? And I think some people could see the negative side of that and be put off, like, well, how are you going to help me when you're just as chaotic, kind of thing. But actually, I've found that having the personal experience of ADHD makes me the therapist that I am, and makes me be able to help people with ADHD more because, okay, yeah, I might be a bit chaotic, but I'm not in my sessions like that's I'm focused. If anything, you get my hyper focused side
Yeah.
when I'm there. But I've got ADHD, so I'm highly empathic. I can spot patterns in behavior that a neurotypical therapist might not be able to. I can, come up with, I'm creative, so I can come up with solutions to problems that are very outside of the box that other people might not see if they don't have ADHD. So I utilize the way my brain works in my therapy sessions to help individuals with ADHD and without ADHD by using these skills. So if you pick a therapist who has ADHD, you aren't getting somebody who can't sit still and is chaotic and isn't actually listening to you because they can't pay attention. That's not true at all. You're getting somebody who is utilizing their skills and the way their brain works to make them better at their job, because I think it makes me better at my job.
There's nobody who's got better insight in ADHD than the
Yeah.
person with ADHD.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't want, not that I don't want someone to not have ADHD if I'm in therapy, but if someone was asking me about my ADHD, my therapist is saying, so what does it mean? And how do
Mm.
you? I'm like, no, no, no,
Hard
no,
to
no.
explain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I need you
Hard
to
to,
already know,
yeah,
what that means.
yeah.
Um,
I need
so
as much all that. Yeah, when we are genuinely, and people don't believe us when we say this, we are genuinely non-judgmental. Like we are, like I know in my training anyway. Like you are trained to be non-judgmental. However, when you have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, you're going to assume everybody's judging you, even if they're a therapist. So if you can know that that therapist isn't judging you because like they get it, they know how you're feeling, then yeah, and they probably do it themselves as well. I am not ashamed to say, as I always show on like my social media, I always show the real side of living with ADHD myself, in the fact of like, yeah, like I'm a human being who I am a professional, but I'm also dancing around the kitchen with my dog and putting on shows for the dog because it brings me joy. And I think if you don't have ADHD, you might look at me and go, "You're a bit nuts," but actually, it's that's just my personality because of my ADHD. So yeah, you can understand it a lot more when you're like, you're one of me, like you're one of us.
it makes a huge difference to talk to someone, just anybody who gets it, who understands you. Because there's certain times in your life, it doesn't really matter, but there are certain times in your life when you really, at that moment, you want and you need someone to understand what's going on in your head right now.
Yes.
No matter who it is. I had a
Yeah.
situation a couple of months ago, I think it was, and I was having, I don't know, maybe I didn't have any meds that day. I was struggling with, my emotions were all over the place, and I was getting really frustrated, and got really upset, and I came up into a bedroom, and I was just so wound up, and sort of teary,
Yeah.
and then my wife came up, and I said to her, and it wasn't towards her, it was like the situation that went on. I was like, I'm not angry at that person. I'm not, it's just, I just want it to be okay. And at that moment, because I was struggling with everything, at that moment, I just wanted her to say, she gets it, or whatever. And she gave me a hug, and she says, I know. I'm like, do you? And then she told me. she told me, she said, like, I know you're gonna blame yourself, and you're gonna ruminate over this. It's gonna go over and over and over, and it's gonna get, it's gonna get worse and worse and worse, where you're constantly just blaming yourself, and you're gonna want to hide away, and get away from everything. I'm like, and at that moment, I thought, oh, God, she gets it, and I just blubbed,
Yeah,
absolutely blubbed, because it's
yeah.
like, oh God, I just at that moment in time, I
It was
needed
safe.
you to get this, and
Yeah,
like she got it. She said, yeah, and it
yeah.
means so much when someone gets it.
It really does. And do you know what? Even further to that, if somebody doesn't get it, because we can't like blame people sometimes if they don't have ADHD and they don't get it. It's not their fault. It's not, they're not doing it purposefully. It's just they don't have the same brain, like chemical makeup, so they can't relate on that level. But being able to own that as well, so being able to say, I don't know exactly what's going on for you, but I want to. And like, but I'm here. And be like, what? And asking more questions of like, so how can we work together so that I can try and support you and give you what you need? So I might not know exactly what's going on in your brain. I don't know you know, why you're feeling this rejection because I only yawned. I don't understand why because I've yawned you think I hate you, but what do you need from me to help show you that I don't? Do you need a cuddle? Do you need to be left alone for a little bit? Do you need a hot drink? Do you like what is it that you need? And also, if you can't communicate that, your partner or whoever it may be, knowing you well enough to sort of know what your needs are. So, like, okay, so when might be for myself, my partner might be like, okay, so when Kate comes back from the supermarket and she's in tears because they didn't have the brand of like butter that she wanted, I know she probably just needs me to make her a cup of tea. Like she probably just needs to be left alone for 10 minutes, or she needs to be able to just have a rant about it, and then she'll be okay. But if I came back and I was visibly upset or frustrated about something like that, and I was being like, "Oh, get over it," oh, I'd see red. I'd feel rejected. I'd see red, and so your partner or say whoever it may be, understanding if they don't understand how you work, understanding what you need can also be just as important.
No, yeah, no, you're right. I used to say to my wife before all this, so look, if in doubt, I need a hug.
Yeah,
If in
yeah, yeah,
doubt, if you think I'm in a bad mood, if you think I'm upset, if you think you've done something wrong, if you think I've done something, if you
yeah,
don't know what to do, if in doubt, I need a hug. There's never ever going to be a time that I don't want a hug from you, and it
yeah,
always makes me feel better. But
yeah,
now we've gone on to the, we've our son is ADHD, and so she's gone through her own journey of learning things, and she's you know she does what she does, and makes me feel better, and it makes a huge difference. I tell you
yeah.
what, though, weird thing before we wrap up, and like I say, I haven't gone through half the questions because we just yabbed it on. So, um, the RSD, I actually I like the way that you talked about the RSD, in a sense that whenever I talk to anyone, or whenever you see anything on social media, or you see anything written down, and it's always they give you an example of something that's happened that's quite kind of severe anyway, and then you take it like you've taken a step further and things like that. I'm like, okay, that works. Okay, I understand that. But my issue is with the stupid things that
Yeah,
happen multiple times a day,
yeah.
and that's where things um I hate. It's the bane of my life.
Really
I hate it.
difficult.
And it's before I got diagnosed, I used to try and explain to my wife, um, but it's really hard to explain to my wife, like you said about why you yawned, and it is those stupid things because you can't explain without sounding stupid. I mean, even now I can't really explain those things without sounding stupid, and I know what it is now. But
Yeah,
it's such a severe thing. It's such an exaggerated
yeah,
feeling,
yeah.
uh,
There's
for
it's
nothing.
it is it's hard. It's
Yeah,
hard. I think it's one of the hardest parts about having ADHD.
yeah,
And I don't think I've met hundreds of clients at this point with ADHD, and I'm not sure I've ever met somebody with ADHD who doesn't struggle with RSD a lot in
Yeah.
some capacity. For myself, that's one of the main things that I say on those bad days. If you ask me if I could not have it, that's probably why. Like
Yeah.
that exact element, that exact trait is probably why, because it's such an awful feeling. And there's not a lot people can say to make you feel better in those circumstances as well. I found anyway for myself. However, it's, one, understanding it is really important. So understanding when your wife does yawn and you're feeling that, being able to pause and check in with yourself about, I'm aware that this is RSD at play here. I know it doesn't make it better. As you say, it doesn't change the feeling, but it's knowing you can't have, so you've got two people will call it different things, but for simplicity, you've got a rational side of your brain and you've got an emotional side of your brain. You can't really use both at one time. What the lights have to be on one side or the other primarily. So if RSD is very emotional, it's not logical. It's not logical to think that somebody hates you because they've yawned. So that's using the emotional side of your brain, or maybe the more anxious part of your brain. By recognizing that RSD is at play, that is a logical thought. So being able to go, I'm feeling this way because of RSD, you've automatically shifted gear. You've automatically gone, ping, lights are on this side of my brain, which can help self-soothe. It doesn't change the fact you've had that response. Again, we can't cure ADHD, we can't eradicate it. I can't sit here and say to you that there's a way that when your wife yawns, that you won't get initially RSD coming in. But again, you can control how you respond to it. So you can control trying to catch it. You'd learn about your behavior, catch that it's RSD, and then go, okay, what do I need? Now I know that this is what's happening. Again, how can I use this information? What do I need? Do I need to take myself upstairs into the bedroom, into some quiet, and just do a breathe? It might be put the rain noises on and do a breathing exercise. Do I need to just say the elephant in the room and just tell my wife, I appreciate you've not, but you've just yawned, and this is what's going on for me right now? And essentially, anxiety and RSD essentially feeds off you doing nothing about it. It breeds. So if you can just be like, I'm anxious, I'm owning it, I'm anxious, I'm struggling with rejection sensitivity right now, I'm feeling this way, automatically you've knocked the wind out of its sails, because it's not hidden, it's in plain sight. So your partner then also is aware of that, so you don't feel like you're on your own. You might feel a bit safe. You might feel safer. Obviously, if this is a safe person for you, is where this would come in. And your partner might go, okay, I'm aware I've not done anything wrong. I know, and I can see that you're not saying I've done something wrong, but it might just be a hand on your leg. It might just be stroking your arm or holding hands or something that's just going to make you feel this person, they don't hate me. They don't need to console you. They don't need to, give you lots of, it can be quite exhausting if every time they yawn, they've got to give you lots of verbal reassurance. But if they know, I know that when I yawn, this is how it's going to make him feel. So I'm not bad for yawning, but when I do yawn, just going to squeeze his hand a little bit just to let him know that everything's okay. Give him that really subtle reassurance. It might be a look. They might yawn, but then look at you and smile. And it's just things like that pop. The anxiety just goes bang. No, it's just, it doesn't have to be a massive thing. It could just be, say, a look, a touch, a sound, something of gentle reassurance, or you leaving the room, taking time to self-soothe and coming back to that situation. Everybody is different, but as I said to you before, learning what you need is the power.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, this has been brilliant. Seriously, really, really, really good. So glad you came on. It's
Thank you for having me.
it's been an interesting conversation, and I hope people listen, and I hope people take up therapy. because it makes a massive, massive difference. And it's like you said, it's like anything else you may go to. If you don't get on with that person, if you don't get on with your GP, that doesn't mean you're never going to go to the GP ever again.
Yeah.
You'll change your GP, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So you've got to, yeah, you've got to have that in mind, and you've got to, I guess, give yourself that, that permission to let yourself, be yourself when you're in therapy as well, because that's what it is about. Um,
Yeah.
but you've
The
been brilliant.
Yeah, the relationship's so important because when you meet somebody that you know you can be yourself around, that's where the magic's going to happen. But
Yeah.
as you say, having that persistence with it. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's good. It's a good topic to talk about because I think it's not spoken about enough. So
No, it's
thank you for
not.
giving me the opportunity to share.
No, absolutely. And before we go, then please give yourself a bit of a give yourself a bit of an
That promo.
advert. There you go. You got 30 seconds.
Um,
Off you go.
so yeah, I do offer one-to-one counselling sessions for everybody, not just individuals with ADHD. So no matter what you're experiencing, whatever your problem, there's nothing I haven't heard, and there's nothing that is really off limits for me to work with. So my books are open currently. So if you would like one-to-one counselling session, my website is dotswellbeing.com, so DOTS wellbeing.com. And I also run some social media pages where you'll see me being very informative yet realistic and a little bit chaotic, and dancing around the kitchen with my dog, which is also at dots wellbeing on both TikTok and Instagram. So yes, if you would like any counselling sessions or you just want a bit of a giggle at me on Instagram, then give me a follow.
Bless you. I'll put all the details on any of the posts I send out anyway.
Fab,
So
thank you very
everyone will
much.
have access to that.
Amazing.
So yeah, that'll be that. And yeah, guys, thanks for listening. As always, be good, be kind, and remember, you're not alone. Thank you.
You're not alone. Thank